In February 2026, the vast American plains, usually a symbol of peace and quiet endurance, became the stage for a disaster no one saw coming. The land, parched from months of drought and unseasonably warm winds, was a tinderbox waiting for a spark. It took just a single spark to ignite the dormant grasslands. In an instant, the Ranger Road fire exploded across western Oklahoma and southwestern Kansas, fueled by relentless winds and bone-dry vegetation. Within hours, what started as a flicker became a regional crisis. Flames raced across the horizon, devouring everything in their path. Over 145,000 acres were consumed in a single, unstoppable blaze, and more than 155,000 acres would be scorched before the day was done. The fire moved with a terrifying speed, leaving little time for warnings or evacuations. The fire sprinted across the landscape, leaping roads, rivers, and even state lines. Emergency services were quickly overwhelmed, as the inferno outpaced every effort to contain it. Communities that had stood for generations suddenly found themselves in the fire's direct path, with little hope of escape. Drone footage from Tyrone, Oklahoma, captured the devastation in real time. Homes and barns collapsing in flames, livestock fleeing, and the very fabric of rural life reduced to ash. For many, it was the loss of not just property, but of heritage and history. The State Emergency Operations Center was activated as reports poured in from every direction, signaling a disaster of historic proportions. Officials scrambled to coordinate resources, but the scale of the fire was unlike anything they had ever faced. As night fell, the fire's glow on the horizon became a constant, menacing reminder of the battle ahead. The sky was painted orange and red, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke and burning earth. The air was heavy with both smoke and loss, as families gathered on the edges of their properties, watching generations of hard work and memories threatened in a matter of minutes. The sense of helplessness was overwhelming, as neighbors comforted each other and hoped for a miracle. The high plains, long known for their resilience and the strength of the people who call them home, now faced a force of unimaginable power. The advancing flames threatened not just land and livestock, but the very spirit of the region. As dawn approached, the true scope of the crisis was only beginning to unfold. The landscape was forever changed, and the fight for survival had only just begun. The Ranger Road fire's speed was no accident. It was fueled by dry grasses, open terrain, and relentless wind. In the heart of the plains, these elements combined to create a perfect storm for wildfire. The wind didn't just push the flames, it whipped them into a frenzy, sending tongues of fire leaping across the landscape faster than anyone could have anticipated. The plains, parched by months of drought, offered a near-continuous bed of fuel. Every blade of grass, every brittle weed became kindling. The earth itself seemed to thirst for moisture, but instead, it fed the fire's hunger. With no natural barriers, no rivers, no forests, no rocky outcrops, the fire swept across vast areas, driven by its own weather and powerful convection. The open landscape allowed the flames to move unimpeded, creating a wall of fire that stretched for miles. Embers soared miles ahead, igniting spot fires and outpacing containment lines. These windborne sparks created new blazes far from the main front, making the fire's advance even more unpredictable and dangerous. Firefighters built breaks only to find the blaze had already leapt ahead. Their efforts, though heroic, were often outmatched by the fire's speed and cunning, as flames found new paths around every obstacle. The fire attacked on multiple fronts, overwhelming resources and strategy. Crews found themselves surrounded, forced to retreat as the inferno split and surged in unexpected directions. Storm chasers captured fire whirls, tornadoes of flame, illustrating the chaos. These spinning columns of fire and smoke were both mesmerizing and terrifying, a testament to the fire's raw power. The fine, dry grasses burned with explosive speed, creating a headfire that raced with the wind. In mere minutes, entire fields were consumed, leaving nothing but scorched earth in their wake. This relentless leading edge forced rapid evacuations and threatened everything in its path. Families had only moments to gather belongings and flee as emergency vehicles raced to stay ahead of the advancing flames. The anatomy of the fire was pure aggression, unpredictable, fast, and deadly. It moved with a mind of its own, defying forecasts and challenging even the most experienced responders. Containment seemed impossible as the inferno advanced. The fire's fury left a trail of devastation, rewriting the landscape and testing the limits of human endurance and resolve. Weather didn't just play a part in this disaster, it was the driving force that turned a dangerous fire into a full-blown catastrophe. In a matter of hours, what began as a manageable blaze escalated into an uncontrollable inferno, fueled by a perfect storm of extreme conditions. Hurricane-force winds, gusting over 60 miles per hour, whipped the flames into a frenzy, sending embers flying for miles and spreading the fire with terrifying speed. These relentless gusts made it nearly impossible to predict the fire's path, putting entire communities at risk in minutes. The air itself was bone-dry, with humidity levels dropping into the single digits. This sucked every last bit of moisture from the land, turning grass, brush, and even trees into tinder, ready to ignite at the slightest spark. In these brutal conditions, water and fire retardant evaporated before they could even reach the flames. Firefighters found themselves nearly powerless, their best tools rendered useless by the searing heat and relentless wind. Unseasonably warm temperatures, more typical of midsummer than winter, primed the landscape for disaster. The heat not only dried out the land but also sapped the energy of those fighting the fire, making every effort more difficult. Months of relentless drought had left the soil and vegetation parched and brittle, creating a vast supply of fuel for the flames. Every blade of grass, every fallen branch became part of the fire's unstoppable advance. As if the fire wasn't enough, blinding dust storms, whipped up by the same fierce winds, swept across the region. These storms made evacuation and emergency response treacherous, reducing visibility to near zero and turning roads into hazards. With the skies choked by smoke and dust, aerial firefighting was grounded. Crews on the ground were left to battle the blaze with hoses and shovels, facing overwhelming odds and dangerous conditions. The weather created a perfect storm, an unstoppable firestorm, zero visibility, and no relief from above. Every element seemed to conspire against those trying to save their homes and land. In the end, the region was left to face the inferno with little more than grit, determination, and hope. Hoping for a break in the weather, and for the strength to rebuild when the flames finally died down. Amid the chaos, stories of courage and heartbreak emerged. Ranchers raced to save herds, driving through smoke and fire to rescue animals that were family. One woman described flames flying overhead as she scrambled to safety with her livestock. Evacuation orders came with little warning. Families grabbed what they could and fled, unsure if they'd have a home to return to. Neighbors became lifelines, sharing information and offering help as the fire closed in. The emotional toll was immense. Uncertainty, fear, and loss shadowed every decision. Community bonds were tested and strengthened in the face of disaster. Even with support, the sense of helplessness was overwhelming. Firefighters, local volunteers, and state crews stood between the fire and total destruction. They faced exhaustion, extreme heat, and shifting winds that could trap them in an instant. Equipment was pushed to the limit. Terrain and smoke made every step dangerous. In Beaver County, a fire truck overturned, injuring 3 firefighters, a stark reminder of the risks. With aerial support grounded, ground crews dug fire breaks and protected homes, often with flames just yards away. Bulldozers carved lines in the earth, and water was rationed for the most critical spots. Every firefighter knew the danger, but none backed down. Their determination saved lives and slowed the fire's advance. Against impossible odds, they fought for every inch. The dangers extended far beyond the flames. Smoke blanketed the region, turning roads into disorienting, hazardous corridors. For those with respiratory issues, the air was toxic. Even the healthy struggled to breathe. Emergency responders faced hours in thick smoke, risking their health to save others. Blowing dust and smoke created near whiteout conditions, causing accidents and confusion. Burned trees and downed power lines posed deadly threats long after the fire passed. Roads and communications were disrupted, complicating evacuations and rescue. The psychological toll, fear, loss, and uncertainty was as real as any physical danger. Recovery would mean facing both visible and invisible scars. As thousands fled, communities opened their doors and hearts. Emergency shelters sprang up in schools and churches, offering food, water, and a place to rest. Volunteers and aid organizations worked around the clock, providing comfort and information. Farmers offered pasture for displaced livestock. Businesses donated supplies. Social media became a lifeline, connecting those in need with those who could help. Animal shelters and vets took in lost pets, while search parties looked for strays. Emergency hay and feed were rushed to ranchers to save surviving herds. The response was swift, generous, and deeply rooted in rural solidarity. No one faced the crisis alone. As the winds died and the flames receded, the devastation became clear. Over 155,000 acres were blackened, a scar visible from space. Families returned to find homes reduced to ash, barns and equipment twisted by heat. The loss of winter grazing land and thousands of cattle was a crushing blow to ranchers. Rebuilding miles of fence and replacing lost livestock would take years and enormous resources. The ecological damage was severe, habitat destroyed, topsoil exposed to erosion. The trauma of loss and the stress of recovery weighed heavily on survivors. The fire's impact went far beyond property. It changed lives and landscapes. Recovery would be long, expensive, and emotionally taxing. Yet, hope persisted as communities began to rebuild. The Ranger Road fire is a warning. Wildfire can strike anywhere, anytime. Prevention is everyone's responsibility. Avoid sparks, maintain equipment, and respect burn bans. Simple actions, like clearing brush and mowing grass, can save homes and lives. Community cleanup days and defensible space make a real difference. Stay informed, have an evacuation plan, and keep a go bag ready. Vigilance and preparation empower communities to face the next threat. The fires will come again, but with awareness and action, catastrophe can be averted. Together we can protect the plains for generations to come.